Hello. It's your favourite Stoic geezer, innit? Right. Alright. I thought that once again we would forgo Seneca for a week. Sorry. I will get through this at some point. It's a very interesting discussion I recently had, and I thought it was interesting. And it's a discussion that comes up definitely more than once in a while when you discuss Stoicism. We've now spent a lot of time discussing all the central tenets of Stoicism and the control, no control, controlling your emotions, stepping back from your emotions, good emotions and bad emotions, at least in Stoic terms, right? Passions. We've talked about cardinal virtues, wisdom and justice and temperance and courage, and we've done all these things. But there always is a but, and that but it simmers beneath the surface when you really talk about Stoicism. And people in the past, like my quilladilic friend Nicholas, who pointed this out a long time ago, and I just started with these videos. People have asked me this, and we should address today. Isn't Stoicism selfish? And I would love to say no, it's not. But in many ways, it is a somewhat selfish philosophy. Now, selfish is a difficult word because it's inherently negative. I don't think there's a positive way to interpret selfishness. Give me a second here, because it's an important point. So the argument that people raise, and that I think has been raised in the period when Stoicism was being developed, was, so what you're saying is, if everybody does the right thing, the world would be a better place. You know, if you understand this is within my control, this is not within my control. If you would have leaders who are really, let's call it enlightened, who really want the best for their people, then the world would be a better place. If they would apply Stoic principles and understand that they're there to serve and that they should help and that they really should do the best for people, and the society would be a good place. You'd have a utopia. If everybody would be able to control their negative emotions, if everybody would be fairly selfless, if everybody would understand this is within my control, but this genuinely is not within my control, you could have a utopia. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, actually wrote a book called The Republic, not Plato's Republic, but Zeno's Republic. And it got very weird very quickly about people basically just sharing wives and such. It was actually a bit odd. He was still a bit of a cynic at that point. Anyway, I'm not saying the world would be better if we would all be swapping wives. Anyway, here's the rub. But people don't do that. That's the issue, isn't it? People don't all do the right thing. They're not all virtuous. Very, very, very many of them are actually very viceful. They don't have temperance, but they display gluttony. They don't have courage, but they display cowardice. They don't know what is and is not within their control, and they say that things are within their control that are not, and they say that things are not within their control that actually are. That's easy. Climate change, not within my control. Sorry, nothing I can do. Sorry. Right? That happens all the time. That's just one example, but it happens all the time. People do this all the time. Well, there's nothing you could do. Nothing you can do. But often you can do something. Then, where do you stand? As a Stoic. Where do you stand? Because it's one thing to say everybody should do. If everybody would be a Stoic, then the world would be a better place. But this is the same as saying playing the flute is really easy. You stick it in your mouth, you blow, and you move your fingers rhythmically in the right way, and then you play a song. Yeah. It's not that easy, is it? But that's, in all seriousness, then what do? Does that mean that Stoicism then fails? Well, I love Stoicism. I love it because it's been so useful in my life. It's taught me many things. It's made me, in many ways, a better person. I can genuinely, with my hand on my heart, say that. But it is true. It's a very inward-focused philosophy. A philosophy that can easily be warped, misshapen, misshaped into some sort of perversion, where people do say, it's not within my control, while it is. Why they do the wrong thing while they know full well what the right thing to do is. And that's hard. It's hard to reconcile that with the idea of Stoicism as being useful. So I think what we could do here is look at Stoicism in the way that I think it was developed. Now we have to get back in history. When the ancient Hellenistic schools of philosophy came to be, whether that is the Peripatetic school, Aristotle, or the Platonic school, or the Epicureans, or the Cyrenaics, or the Cynics, or the Stoics, or there's a very long list, right? All these different schools. Those schools of thought developed at a time when there was no such thing as a psychologist or a psychiatrist, when there was no such thing as a life coach or counseling you could go to. But there were schools of philosophy, and those schools of philosophy, each in their own way, with their own principles, tried to help people lead a good life. That's what Socrates did, right? He wanted to examine life. So when you had a problem, for example, you always, something bad, your brother always talks down to you and you feel very insecure around your brother. You don't know how to handle that. Well, these days, if you can't just solve that with your brother, you could go to see a counselor and discuss that. Or if you're, a relationship is failing, or if you don't know how to handle things with your parents, or if you don't, whatever, all these kinds of things, big things that we experience now just as much as people did then. Now you can have all types of counseling and this, that, and the other. Back in the day, you couldn't. You'd have to go to a philosopher. And depending on that philosopher's tradition, they would say, say Stoic, but this is within your control and that is not within your control. Right? Epictetus does this all the time. If you read not the Enchiridion, but his discourses, many of them start with something like, a man entered and said, or and asked, I have this issue with my wife, with my brother, with my sister, with my mother. It happens all the time. And then Epictetus would say, okay, I get it. Here's what you should think, or what you should do according to our school. Right? If you don't like it, the Cyrenaics are there, the Garden of Epicurus is there, there's the Lyceum, there's that kind of stuff. And so I think that's how you should consider a school of thought like Stoicism. It is meant to help an individual with specific principles, to help that individual through specific problems, through specific challenges. If you suffer from too much anger, I think that's a very good example of Stoicism. If you suffer from too much anger, here's what you do. You take a deep breath. Mentally, you take a step back and you ask yourself, is this worth being upset about? What about this other person I'm upset with? Do they deserve this? Have they truly earned my anger? Or is it even worth being upset about in the first place? Or are they criticizing me, but they're coming from a place that's irrelevant? They don't even know what they're talking about. Why would I be angry? All of these are Stoic strategies. But they're focused on you. They're not focused on a society as a whole. And it is certainly true in my mind that if you were to have a society where everyone would practice, not necessarily Stoicism, but these kinds of philosophy, these kinds of living principles, it would be a better society. But it's not, because people don't. So what you can do is what Marcus Aurelius says, then educate people. Then try. I'm paraphrasing him here, but that's what he says. If someone upsets you, the first thing you do is you try to educate that person. Show him why he or she is wrong. But actually, this is not the case. This is the case. Look at it. Look, here are the arguments. See if I'm making sense to you. And then Marcus Aurelius says, and if that does not work, tolerate them. What else can you do? Tolerate them. They're your fellow brothers and sisters. They're all part of humankind. Now you must tolerate them. Now, of course, there are exceptions. If someone has just killed your entire family, well, just tolerate. Obviously, that no longer applies in that context. But if someone calls you an idiot, you can get very angry and upset and all these kinds of things. Or you can think, I don't think you're that great yourself. Bye. Hard. I find hard too. Right? But then you tolerate. You know what? You're absolutely right. Bye. So that's what I think. I think a school of philosophy like that, theoretically, could have tremendous impact on society if everyone in that society would do that thing, would apply those principles. But we know people don't. Vaccination. We know that people don't. So, at that point it breaks down. At that point it's no longer a matter of this philosophy is meant to mend a society. It's meant to mend individuals and their problems. And hopefully, if enough individuals do something, society will be mended. But there's no guarantees. Nor do I think that was ever the true setup of something like a school of philosophy. Because, think about it. Imagine that you would want to create, just for the sake of argument, a thought experiment. You want to create a society that's entirely Stoic. The Stoic society. Well, the first thing a Stoic would say is, okay, but you can't make other people do something. That's not within your control. Literally, opening sentence of the Enchiridion. I used literally deliberately there. Some things are within your control, other things are not within your control. Getting other people to be Stoics is not within your control, so it already breaks down. You can't do that. It might improve society, may also not. It's not within your control. So, there you have it. A very complicated problem that I hope I have addressed in a somewhat coherent fashion. Let me know what you think. What do you think about the inward-facing nature of a school of philosophy like Stoicism? Do you think it's a failure? Do you think it's a weakness? How do you feel about it? Do you think it's not there? I don't know. I'm just curious. Very curious. And that's it. Hope this was useful. Thank you so much for watching. But whether or not you watch is not within my control. I hope you'll be back next time. I'll gladly see you then. Bye.